All right, so at the end of the month, all the birthdays are going to come up here. Birthday the previous month. So, blah, blah, blah. This is a speaker meeting. Our speaker will share her experience, strength, and hope for approximately 45 minutes. We ask for out of respect of our speaker, please to remain seated until she has finished. It's my pleasure to introduce Becky.
Hi, my name's Becky. I'm an alcoholic. My sobriety date is December 2nd, 2015. I was just having a conversation with someone the other day about our sobriety dates, and I always kind of have a mixed feeling when I say my sobriety date, and I say that because sometimes I'm like, that's it. And I don't mean that in like a disrespect way or I'm ungrateful for it. It's more that like, I guess I'm just blown away at how much my life has changed in just a little over 5 years. And to take into account, for 13 months of that, I was in treatment. So that's a pretty short span of time to have so much change in my life that I'm very grateful for. I always like to state too, drugs are a small part of my story, and I don't like to get too much into the using and any of that, because what it comes down to is like we all know the underlying feelings. Sometimes there can be this divide created between drugs or alcohol, but whether you chose those things, food, sex, gambling, like as we learned from the big book, it's not those outside things that are the problem, it's the feelings inside of us. So just try to remember that. So my mom had me when she was 15. The man that she chose as my biological father is he's not the best person. When I was probably like 3 or 4, he molested me, and I don't have any memory of this, which I'm grateful for, but I do believe that this has had an impact on my future relationships and the way that I viewed love. One of my earlier sponsors, the way that she explained it to me was that I was opened up to sexuality at a very young age. And an example of how I've carried that out is I've kind of equated sex equals love. So I've been in toxic relationships, all throughout my using, and even just after sobriety as well. If I'd be fighting with my boyfriend at the time, I would pretty much physically force myself like to make him kiss me, to have sex with me, and that was my way of feeling okay. That was my way of like, everything's gonna be okay, he's not gonna leave me, and we're still gonna be together and everything's fine. And like I said, I've actually carried this pattern into sobriety, and I know that can be hard. I'm sure some of you have gotten sober and then fallen back into a pattern right away, and it's something that you worked so hard on, and you think, oh, I went through treatment, I worked the steps, I'm better now, like I'm not gonna keep doing these things, but that's not the reality. I chose 2 more toxic relationships just out of treatment and repeated these patterns, and I was pretty hard on myself for it, but the difference is that I learned tools and I was aware of my behavior, why I was doing it, and I was able to correct it. So you can put that into any situation, like you're gonna have a slip up, you're gonna fall, but the difference is like you've grown, you have these tools, and you know how to correct this behavior. So shortly after my mom left my biological dad, she met my brother's dad, and he was in my life for quite a few years. I never really know how to explain my childhood, because a lot of times people say like, oh, I had a normal childhood, and more I've like been in recovery and hearing people's stories, I'm like, what is a normal childhood? Like, I don't really know. Like, we all have messed up stuff that we've been through. But I would say mine was as normal as in my mom did everything for us. I mean, I never knew that we were really that poor. She was a single mom for a really long time. And even my brother's dad wasn't really a present dad, which I believe is where my abandonment issues started. Early on, I pretty much had to beg for his attention. He would always choose watching sports or playing video games over hanging out with my brother and I. And I actually read this really interesting book, if anyone's interested. It's called, oh my God, no, I just drew a blank. Why Women, I'll get back to you on that. I just drew a blank. Anyways, what this book talks about, essentially like the parents that you have and how you can tend to seek out relationships that mimic that, and internally you're trying to like recreate the situation and have a better outcome. So my future relationships, I've usually chosen unavailable men. I've also early in recovery heard a lot of people say how they always felt alone in a room of people, and it kind of like sparked an interest in me because I never really felt that way, or I guess realized that I felt similar to that. It was more like I always felt like everyone was closer, so I didn't feel alone. I guess it was just me not feeling good enough. When I was in grade school, I had an incident with my two best friends, and this new girl came to town, and she spread these rumors and lies and turned my two best friends against me, and that kind of also added to my abandonment issues, and I actually ended up leaving schools in the 3rd grade. And all through middle school, high school, like I was, friends with everyone. I did sports, I did cheerleading, I was in band, I was really involved, but I felt everyone was always closer than me. Everyone were more best friends. They had more secrets. Like I wasn't good enough and they didn't want to be my friend. And this is something that I carried through with me for most of my life. My mom ended up divorcing my brother's dad, and we used to go over for visitation, but we pretty much just spent time with my grandpa when we went over there. He wasn't, like I said, he wasn't very involved or wanting to hang out with us, and we actually don't have a relationship with him at all to this day. But my mom met my dad now. I call him my dad. Technically, he's my stepdad. He came into my life when I was 10. So also, I feel like this was maybe a little unstable environment for me. Being that my mom was 15 when she had me, I saw my mom go through a lot. And I tend to tell my mom that I feel like I've seen her live like 5 different lives, and she's like, well, you grew up with me, and it's, I did see a lot of guys in and out. Just probably things that a lot of people don't see their parents go through growing up. I mean, my mom was a kid having a kid as well. But I'm very fortunate to have my dad now. He's been the most amazing father figure. I call him dad, and I couldn't ask for anyone better to be in our lives. So pretty much when the craziness started for me was middle school. I'm a very curious person. I want to try everything. I'll never say no, even if I have no idea what you're talking about. I want to be liked and I want to be a part of, so I'm going to do it. I think I tried smoking cigarettes in 6th grade, and then 8th grade is the first time that I actually got drunk and I smoked weed. I didn't necessarily have an aha moment. I was in the 8th grade, and my friends and I were hanging out with these older boys, and we were just having fun, but I did black out, so I guess my drinking career started as I felt like that was normal, and that's just how I drank. I either puked or I blacked out. I rarely remembered anything, and I didn't really know that that's not how people drink. I didn't know that that wasn't normal. Like, you just drink until you puke, and then you drink some more, and eventually you pass out. When I went into high school, my partying definitely progressed. Pretty much by junior year, I would say I had tried every drug except opiates, and I drank all the time, blackout drunk, was partying every weekend. But the problem was that I was still getting good grades. I was still doing cheerleading, I was in band, and I somehow ended up graduating high school with honors. And this is kind of where the mentality for me of having control set in. And this was something that I believe kept my addiction going for a really long time, is that I was very functioning. I'm a very good liar, I'm a very good manipulator, and it's really easy for me to hide things. And my parents knew that I was doing bad things, but they had no idea the things that I really was doing. So senior year, I graduated at 17. I left as soon as I turned 18, and from the day that I moved out is when I would say I probably wasn't sober very many days. I was definitely smoking weed every day, and I was drinking probably 5 or 6 days out of the week. When I turned 19, I got a fake ID, and then from that moment, my friend and I were pretty much going to like the bars and the clubs 5 or 6 nights a week. We'd usually take one night off, but we were like hanging out at home and still under the influence. So it's not like we were like staying home and not doing anything by any means. So at this time when I was 19, so this part of my story, sometimes I'm a little reluctant to share, and I don't really know why, and my first reaction is to say, like, it's not shame and it's not guilt, because I've done a lot of work around it, but I guess the more I think of it, it's like, I guess it's maybe judgment that I'm scared of. But every time I share this, I always have someone come up to me and say that they relate, or that, you know, they don't hear people talk about it as much, which is why I choose to. Because when I first came to treatment, none of the other girls, surprisingly, out of the whole house had done what I had done, and it kind of made me feel different. So my house manager had pulled me aside and said, hey, I just want to let you know, like, I've done these things. I'm here for you if you want to talk about it. And so I know how good that made me feel. So I always want to be there and be true to my story and hopefully reach out to someone who maybe needs to hear it. So when I turned 19, I started working at a strip club. And at this point in my life, I was going to community college, I had a regular job, and I was doing this. So like I said, my functioning ability was extremely high. I would sleep sometimes like 2 or 3 nights, or 2 or 3 hours a week or a night. I'd always make it to school, make it to my other job, work at night, and I did this for probably like 2 years. I lived on my own. I had my own car. I paid my own bills. As soon as I moved out, I never asked my parents for anything. No one ever helped me. I was pretty self-sufficient, and that really kept my mindset of like, I'm young, I'm partying, I'm having fun. There's nothing wrong with what I'm doing. Like, this is a phase. I'm allowed to do this. I'm just having fun. So obviously my drinking and my drug use escalated working in the club every night. And I would see other girls doing maybe some harder stuff or more illegal things. And I was very judgmental, and there was always these lines that I would never cross. And I was like, God, I would never do that. I can't believe she's doing that. Wow, look at her. And then slowly, maybe I would like cross over one line. And I'd be like, okay, well, I'm doing this, but at least I'm not smoking this, or at least I'm not pawning my stuff like this girl. And then I would cross over another line, and then it would be like, okay, well, at least I'm not selling my body. At least I'm not hanging out with these random guys. I'm going out with this guy that I've known for a while. We're just having dinner. He's just taking me shopping. We're just doing this. And unfortunately, you know, your drinking and addiction progresses, and those lines really start to blur, and your priorities pretty much are about being able to wake up and not be sick. So I did cross the line, and I started selling my body. And during this time, I got a high off of money, manipulating people, getting people to buy me things, paying my bills. It kind of put me on this high of like, I kind of think it was maybe like a cloud over like my real reality, so I don't know how to explain it. Men, money were 2 high things along with the drugs and alcohol that I was addicted to. They gave me a false sense of self-esteem. They gave me a false sense of security. And it was an easy way for me to lie to myself that my life was so great and I had all these great things going for me. And I was using them, no one was using me, and I was in charge. Eventually, I did finish school. I didn't finish community college. I just did 2 years and quit. And then I went to beauty school for aesthetics, and I did finish during this time. I ended up quitting my real job because it was obviously interfering with my partying. So I was just pretty much working random jobs. Sometimes I would just not show up, or I would get fired. Most of the time I wouldn't show up. I would just no call, no show, and just still work at the club every night. But like I said, still that false sense of control. I had my own place. I had my own car. I still never needed anyone for anything. And it just feeded into that perception that I'm in control, and when I want to stop, I'm going to stop. Around this time, I got into a pretty toxic relationship. He didn't really know what I was doing at the time. Like, he knew that I partied and we would drink and do other things together, but he had no idea what I was doing, and we didn't live together, so it was really easy for me to hide what I was doing. But this was like almost a 9-year relationship towards the end. And I mean, we both were awful to each other. I was a horrible person just as much as he was a horrible person. But as my addiction progressed, I lost my main job at a spa, and I wrecked my car. That all happened in the same week. And I couldn't pay for my apartment. And by this point, I was getting eviction notices, but you have like a certain time frame before they take you to court. And so I would wait in that time frame, and like as soon as I could get the money, I would pay it. And I did that for probably like 3 or 4 months in a row. It was getting hard to manage. By that point, I hated what I was doing. I hated working at the club. I hated selling my body. I hated myself. Nothing was fun anymore. I really wouldn't even barely feel drunk or high. Like, I was just doing what I had to do so I wasn't sick in the morning. So I actually, once I lost that job, I ended up moving in with the boyfriend at the time. And this was the first time that I didn't have to work, per se, and pay bills since I was 18. And I was like, I think around 25 or 26 at the time. So I moved in with him. I didn't work. I didn't have to do anything. And I was like, this is awesome. I just sit around and drink and get high all day. And then like 20 minutes, 30 minutes before he gets home, I hurry up and I clean the house and do as much as I can and light a candle and start cooking dinner. So it looks like I was busy all day. I was productive, and I kept this facade up for a really long time. Yeah, it was pretty bad for me because I didn't have to pay any bills. He paid for everything. I still would go to the strip club. He knew that I did that. He didn't care. He was out doing his thing too. So it was kind of like it was a very beneficial relationship. We both knew that we were doing shady stuff, but we wouldn't admit it, and it was kind of like a don't ask, don't tell type situation. And I went wild. Like, I was living 2 lives. And I mean, it's hard regardless of what you're doing. Like, it's hard to survive, every day as an alcoholic, but it's really hard living 2 lives as well, because you have to pretend and put a smile on your face, and you actually have to shower, and you have to take care of yourself, and you can't just lay there and let yourself go because you have this other facade to put up with, which is another thing that fed into my manageability and my functioning. Is like, I had to keep up a certain type of appearance. And by this point, my family kind of had suspicions. I'm from Oregon, so we were living in Portland, and they were living in Bend, 3 hours away, so I didn't always see them that often. But, your parents know, and I think it was one of those things where my parents saw me here and there, so they saw drastic differences every time they saw me. Long story short, I eventually got caught what I was doing, and that was the first time I went to treatment. I didn't go because I wanted to by any means. It was kind of like I had to because I got caught. And this started my revolving door in and out of treatment centers. I've probably been to a handful of detoxes. I went to inpatient twice, day treatment, a couple outpatients, and then including this last time, 6 times. I think 6 times I've been to treatment. So the first handful of times, it was always because I got caught. I had nowhere to live. And eventually that boyfriend kicked me out, which was always an empty threat. He always said he was going to kick me out, which I knew he never was going to, and he did. He finally did it. So I went to go stay with my grandpa for a little while at that time, and my grandpa actually ended up kicking me out too, which really broke my heart because, you know, my grandpa sat me down and cried as he was telling me I had to leave, and my aunt and my cousins also lived in the house, and my aunt's a recovering addict, and if the courts were to find out about, you know, me being there, she'd get her kids taken away. And that's something that I feel a lot of guilt for. I feel really bad. My grandpa's a very nice person, and a lot of people have taken advantage of him and his niceness. So yeah, my grandpa cried, and he told me I had to leave, and he told me that if my aunt wasn't there, he would still let me be there, which just shows like how codependent my grandpa is, because he knew what I was doing, and I was doing some pretty hard stuff. So once my grandpa kicked me out, I went to go stay with this guy, and I pretty much was just sleeping on his couch. I somehow got a job at a spa, and I still had my car. So I had those things. I just didn't have, you know, an actual like residence. Technically, I was homeless, and the homeless population in Portland is pretty bad. And there's a lot of homeless camps around, and I would drive by, you know, the freeway underpasses, and I would just think to myself, like, that's gonna be me. I wasn't like okay with it or wanted that by any means, but that's like the only way I saw out. I had no idea about recovery. I just knew that I was physically dependent, and I couldn't stop. Nothing mattered to me. My parents have cried to me. My whole family has cried to me and screamed. I mean, you guys know the drill, and I don't care. I'll just have a straight face and be waiting till you're done so I can leave and go do what I need to do. My mom called me one day and was begging me to go back to treatment. I was set and determined that all I needed was a sober living that would let me bring my dog. So my dog is my life. He's my child. I've had him for almost 15 years, and he's very special to me. He's been with me through some very, very dark times, and sometimes when I tell people that he's 15 and I've had him the whole time, they're like, holy shit, you have kept your dog alive through addiction? And I'm like, honestly, like, I think he kept me alive. He's just the best, so there's no way I was going to leave him, so I needed a sober living that would let me bring my dog. And my mom kept trying and telling me I need to go back to treatment, and finally she just said, all right, I found this place in Arizona for you, so when you're ready, give me a call. And she hung up. And I think probably it was like 2 weeks that passed by, and I was sitting on the bathroom floor trying to do what I needed to do. I was having a hard time, and I caught a glimpse of myself in the mirror, and for me, I believe this was like a true step one for me. Because I like really saw myself in the mirror at that moment, and I was like, what am I doing? I don't know what I'm fighting and holding on to so hard. You know, it's a matter of time before I lose my job. I was stealing money from my boss's, from the actual work account, and my boss's purse and my coworker's purse. There was just a matter of time before I lost that job. It was a matter of time before I wrecked my car again. I mean, who knows how long that guy would have let me stay on his couch. Like, I had nothing. Really, the only thing of value left to lose was my life. And fortunately enough, I never necessarily wanted to die, but I guess I didn't really care if I did die. It was just like one of those things. It's like, well, if it happens, it happens. So I called my mom, and I said, okay, I'm ready. At this point, I didn't really care the details. I was ready. And honestly, in a way, this was like a step 1, 2, and 3 for me, because I finally like saw how powerless and unmanageable my life was, and I admitted to myself, like, I clearly cannot do this on my own. This had probably been like 2 or 3 years that I had been in and out of treatment and trying to do it my way, and it obviously wasn't working. Like, I'd take bits and pieces from the steps, and I really took the slogan, fake it till you make it. I really ran with that one. Like in the beginning, I would like show up under the influence to meetings and like to meet my sponsor, and I'd be like, well, I mean, I'm here, I'm doing the work, like I'm trying. So I really tried to like make the program my own for a little while. But yeah, I always say that moment in the bathroom was like my mini 1, 2, and 3, because I had all those feelings and I submitted right there. So my mom came and picked me up and we flew to Arizona. I ended up going to a pretty long-term treatment here, which is what I needed. Sometimes people think I'm crazy when I tell them I was in treatment for 13 months. Technically, it's a 6-month program. I was lying and I was being shady. I did have a graduation date at 6 months. And I got caught for doing some other stupid stuff, and they sat me down and they were like, is there anything else, that you want to say? And it honestly was like kind of a word vomit, and I was like, I've been talking to my ex the whole time. As soon as I got my phone back, I started talking to my ex, and my plan was to like move back to Oregon and things are going to be great, and we're going to live happily ever after. And I believe at that moment it was my higher power helping me get rid of that lie, because there's no way that I'd be sober or alive if I moved back to Oregon. But it was from that moment, like that was the first moment in sobriety that I had no lies. I had no lies. I wasn't holding anything back, and it was the most freeing feeling ever. Like I've lied my whole life. Like I lied as a 3-year-old. My mom said I lied all the time when I was a little girl. And finally for this moment, I had no secrets. I had no lies, and that's like really when I started to put in the work. I had a few sponsors in the beginning until I found the perfect one. And sometimes, for any newcomers in here, sometimes it's really easy to come into the program and say, like, I want a sponsor who's my age. I want a sponsor who has my DOC. I want a sponsor who's done this, who's been this. And that's what I did. I wanted, someone exactly, like, cut out of me. And that's not how it worked out. And, like, when I first got into the rooms, I hated women's meetings because I thought everyone was judging me and talking about me, because it's all about me, yeah, like I love women's meetings. I love meetings with old timers. My sponsor is not a cutout cardboard of me. So sometimes we come in with like these preconceived notions and we think we know what's best for us, but just try to keep an open mind, because you might be surprised what's best for you. So anyways, with her, I started working through the steps over again. And so I kind of went over my 1, 2, and 3 with you. Step 4 was my favorite, and I know I'm a weirdo for saying that. Everyone seems to hate it, and I loved my 4th step, honestly. I did like 3 full composition notebooks, I really went into in depth, and I always thought that I was a certain person, and then when I did my 4th and 5th, and I started realizing my character defects, I am nothing like I thought I was. I am not this like easygoing, laid back person. Like I'm super controlling. I have set really high expectations, and I never saw these things about myself until I did this. So I love those 2 steps. Obviously, as I mentioned earlier, it's a daily battle, and it'll be a lifelong thing, working on my character defects and asking for them to be removed. My amends, I still haven't finished all my amends yet. I just took my first trip back home to Oregon last August, and I got to do quite a few there. I've just wanted to do as many as I can in person. So far, I have been able to do all of them in person. There's just a few people still that I have yet to make them to. They all have gone really well. My sponsor always told me don't go in with expectations, which expectations was my number 1 character defect, so I did go into them with expectations, and they far exceeded my expectations. I really thought a few of my grandparents, it was going to be awkward, uncomfortable, and it actually was amazing. Everyone was very receptive, and I'm very thankful that my family still wants me a part of their life. As far as like meditating, I'm not very good at meditating. It's really, really hard for me. But also, I have, I guess, in my own way, my own kind of way of meditating. I really enjoy taking my dog on hikes or just like taking my dog out anywhere. I tend to find that it's easy for me to talk to my higher power, maybe when I'm driving in the car or when I'm outside. So I feel like maybe it's more nature-based. And then as far as step 12, I always tell everyone, I tell my sponsees this all the time, like you can be 2 hours sober and be on step 12. I truly believe step 12 really helped. Sometimes I want to say help keep me sober, but I never wanted to drink or use during this time. So I guess I would say step 12 helped keep me sane the second year of my sobriety. When I got out of that treatment center, I went into alumni and then I ended up working there for a little while. So while I was working there, one of my best friends, she worked there too. So like we went through that treatment center together. We did alumni together. We worked there together and I formed a really close bond with her. So within a 2-week span, I found out that she was moving. My mom had cancer, and the guy that I was dating at the time was like cheating on me and drinking and getting high behind my back. And that was pretty devastating to me, to find all those things out at once. And I think the hardest thing was my mom. As I explained earlier, my mom and I have grown up together, and she's very close to me. So it was kind of like all these emotions of, oh my God, my mom's never going to see me get married. She's never going to see my kids. And I freaked out and totally went down a spiral. And I was like, I'm losing my biggest support system. And then on top of that, I fell into my toxic behavior again, into this relationship. Like, what is wrong with me? And it was just like this downward spiral. And I really immersed myself in coffee dates. So I was always usually probably doing like 2 to 3 coffee dates a week, but during this time I probably did like 5 to 6 coffee dates a week. They're my favorite. I love meeting with newcomers. I love meeting with people with my same amount of time, people with more time than me. I just get a lot out of it, and like I said, I'm not going to say it helped keep me sober, because I actually never had a thought once during that time that I wanted to drink or use. Which, when I first came into the room, I'd get really annoyed when people would be like, yeah, the obsession was lifted and I never think about it anymore and blah, blah, blah. And I'd be pissed. Like, I'd be sitting there feeling like crap, and I'm like, good for you. Like, good for you. I'm so glad it worked out for you. Like, I was pissed. So, now I'm one of those annoying people. But I like to share it because I'm sure people share it because it is a possibility, and unfortunately, it doesn't happen for everyone. But for me, like, I don't think about it. It's not my go-to thought. So I feel very fortunate. So yeah, during that time period, it was never a thought to me that I wanted to go back out again. But it just really helped me get out of my head. And that long-term treatment center that I went to, 3 coffee dates a week were mandatory, so I kind of like got in the groove of going to them, and I just think it's a great tool that everyone should take advantage of. Like, you help the person helps you, it helps you get out of your head. You're being of service. Actually, I don't remember if it was like my first or second coffee date with my sponsor now, but I'll never forget, because I was like pretty newly sober, and we got done, and she was like, wow, you really helped me today. And I remember leaving thinking, like, what in the hell do I have to offer? Like, what does she mean I helped her? But that memory has stuck with me, and it made me feel good that night that, like, wow, I actually, like, helped someone. So, yeah, step 12, like, you can be on it in the beginning. That also is, like, a lifelong thing, obviously, that you're always going to do. I've sponsored a handful of women. Unfortunately, sponsees come and go, and they don't always stick, but I always, keep the door open, and I'm always available and try to sponsor women when I can, and, they come up to me. So just talk a little bit about what my life is like now. I lived in Prescott for like 2 years, and then I moved down to Mesa, and I started working as an esthetician again. I got my own place, and shortly after, I actually started working 2 jobs, which is, I'm very proud of myself for doing that, because for so long, I was addicted to getting money, you know, the quickest and fastest way and any illegal way that I can, that for me to like really work hard and work 2 jobs, and I wouldn't even necessarily say I financially needed to. I chose to do it because I was like, you know, I'm living here alone. I have this free time, like I might as well pay some stuff off and build a savings. You know, I'm not married, I don't have kids yet. I had the time, so I'm pretty proud of myself. I did 2 jobs for about 2 years. I just quit the restaurant recently. And shortly after I moved away also, I got a boyfriend, and it was like my first healthy relationship that I've ever had in my life. I'll tell you, that's probably the most work I've had to put in sobriety. It's it's hard when you're in toxic relationships your whole life to not be that type of person. That's like definitely like a daily thing for me, and I'm very thankful that I found someone who is very patient with me. I was probably a little psycho, and I didn't trust anyone, and yeah, I'm just very thankful for the person I found. And we're getting married soon in like a month and a half, and hopefully having a family soon and all that fun stuff. So so like earlier when I said that, when I say, you know, my sobriety date, I'm like, really, that's all? Because I'm like, I don't know how all this has happened in that amount of time, honestly. I'm kind of blown away. And sometimes when I like talk to my coworkers or people who have, you know, they're, you know, normies and don't know about this life, and they may ask about something, I tell a story, and I'm like, damn, I used to really be like that. Like, it's kind of crazy to think of the stuff that I used to do. But yes, I'm just very grateful for this program, and thank you for, I'm a little short, but I don't really know what else to talk about. So, okay, thank you.
Thanks, Becky. Very good story. Let's thank her one more time.